After a little bit of a break, I'm going to be getting back to the reconstruction of the Powerglide automatic that's going to the 1964 Chevy Impala SS. This trip around we're going to put the rear pump back on and the rear governor assembly. Actually the only governor assembly on the transmission for that fact, and hopefully we'll get to be able to put the band back in along with the struts. The pump is just mock fitted over here to make sure that will fit in the case. It actually turned out to be ever so slightly warped, but that's been corrected, so the pump cover without the rubber O-ring that goes around it just slides in and out without too much force. And then maybe we'll even get to do the band servo today as well, but we'll get started with this now. Again, just to re-emphasize, always keep your bits and pieces of sub-assemblies cataloged and tagged in bags so that you don't have any mix-up of parts or anything like that. Yes, the bags are starting to get holes in them, but we haven't lost any parts yet. And then even tinier parts you can put into their own little bags to put in. This one tiny little piece over here is all that you have that goes into the shaft that drives the rear pump. This piece is missing. The car really won't move or it'll start to lose speed once you get above 35 miles an hour when the rear pump is starting to take over in these types of transmissions. So again, keep everything as proper sub-assemblies. New bushing is already in place and things, so we're all ready to go. Clean plaque for the parts, the bits and pieces. It's already been washed, cleaned and taken care of. We have to match up our proper rear seals. We have a seal that we kept that matches and goes around this section over here, but we'll match it up to the new seal, obviously. We'll hold these parts in with Vaseline, obviously, to make it stay in place while it's going in, to give it a good shot at healthy life when it cranks over for the first time. Nope, probably flips over the other way. Thank goodness they make these things foolproof. Well, relatively foolproof anyway. Around and around we go. There we go. That lines up like that. You can also see the scuff marks of the pump. I should have looked at the first time. Now these are just rub marks. They're not even scuff marks, but that you always expect to have a little bit of wear and tear on that. But we'll continue along in a second once they get things stuck on properly. Now we're going to install this tiny but very important drive pin into the output shaft. Sorry about the lighting here, it's just the angle that we're on. Last thing in the world you want to do is lose the darn thing. Then we got to take apart that parts Powerglide for another couple of parts, but there we go, it's in. I'll get a still picture of that in a minute. Then we'll proceed to put the rear oil pump on. As you can see, there's an index over here for where the drive gear has got to meet for that little nail-like fixture that we have. And we'll slide it on, and then we can do our adjustments to turn the actual pump housing itself around. But the main thing is get the pump on first. There we go. We know that's engaged because that's as far down as it goes. You felt a little bump and it slid right on. Now we'll spin this around on the end. And of course I forgot to get the picture that we needed to show the placements of the pin, but there we go, pretty much so. Two. I believe that's it, but we'll double check in a second with the proper light. It's just the angle that I have the light on here right now that doesn't show it too well, but we'll be back in a minute. Well, the rear pump assembly is back on, and of course with an all-important oil deflector that goes here because oil comes pouring out of there generally. It sloshes around, so you want to make sure that you don't have any cavitation or anything like that. That's back on. These 4 bolts over here have to be torqued down between 8 to 12 pounds. Always check out your torque specs on things like that because it can end up being a major headache if you over torque something, especially with aluminum case, because you can warp pieces of parts. I mean, somebody could easily reef down on those things at like the 20-25 pounds. They won't strip, but it can certainly cause some warpage and some severe wear issues in this thing. So we'll snug it down, and then we'll do our torquing sequences later on. Not necessarily on the camera, because, well, why waste time like that? Plenty of other spots you can look and learn and see about torquing nuts and bolts down. But so the rear pump is on, then we'll get ready for the rear governor assembly. Well, we'll get it ready to put together. A little dab of Vaseline to hold it together here. Make sure that stupid little screen doesn't fall out. Always, and of course, always keep your surfaces clean over here. Cleanliness, I can't stress how important it is, especially on delicate parts like governors. It can lead to upshift problems and things. Sometimes you can get rid of them by madly working the gear shift lever to get whatever is stuck inside of there out, but why ask for problems from the very beginning? And the specifications call for about 8 pound-feet of torque on these smaller 7/16 head nuts. Excuse me, bolts. And then we'll get to changing the seal. The seals on the O-ring seals, the snap ring seals over here. Newer kits come with the Teflon gaskets that would sew up here. Nothing wrong with those. How you can really tell if one of these rings is worn? You gotta be very careful, because these are almost like razor edges over here, and they'll cut you. These are pretty worn. Ironically, the rest of the transmission was in pretty good shape, but I guess it's because of the way these things run that these would get a lot of wear. It seems to be even more so than the pump, which we'll be examining a little bit later on. Yes! Now, these two bolts over here. This basically is all that holds your governor in place, and it sits in there like that, like that. A little rounded hole. This one was broken off inside the transmission when we took it apart. Now it's still running, because I guess this old bolt was just barely holding on the edge over there and holding it enough, but you never know what you're going to find along the way. Now, we tried to source one of these things and we couldn't find one. What we were going to do is just grind down an ordinary bolt down to something like that, but fortunately we had a spare Powerglide kicking around, so we were able to find the proper bolt, and we'll follow the specifications very carefully, because it looks like it just has to be barely snugged down. That's all that's driving the governor around and around on the tail shaft of the transmission. Well, now we'll get these old sealing rings off. Cast iron, got to be careful, because like I said, they are pretty sharp and slippery to boot, because we did service the governor before we put it into the bag to make sure it was all clean and ready to go, because it was a little bit time consuming. Like I've been saying all along, yeah, I know it's been a while since we were last back, but time is getting to be the essence. But I mean, like I said, there's pretty much a very, very sharp edge on these over here. You can tell they're worn. I have a funny feeling that the front pump and the governor sealing rings are pretty much the same things on these units, because I have 4 rings the same size in the kit, the whole kit and caboodle, and so it looks like that. It's going to be a match. Yeah. And of course we have one big one that'll be left for the low band servo over, which is a cast iron one. It looks like. I guess they felt that one had to stay cast iron. I know for sure that one actually itself is pretty warm, which we'll see later on. So let's get cracking on this. Get this off over here. Double whammy. I could just break this off actually, so I'm not going to be using it again. But challenge is always fun. No go. Okay, we'll be back in a minute. Well, with the help of a small screwdriver, I managed to get both of the steelies off without busting them. You never know how well these Teflon rings will work, but we'll keep the old ones in there. hit just in case. We do have a problem, and I seem to think it's from these Teflon rings, but I doubt if that'll be the case because they do work well as long as you don't pinch or roll them. So again, of course, we're going to get some Vaseline onto this over here. You want to make sure these are nice and recessed in the grooves when you slide them on, although this is tapered in here so that it won't cause you any problems, but can't put too much oil on these things. And of course, like I say, never ever use ordinary axle grease because it will never dissolve and it will cause a ton of problems. Vaseline will dissolve and give it a pretty sweet smell in there. Just a dab of tranny oil just to add into the mix. On there. There we go. Lots of good transmission oil. Alright. One ring. And again, we have to make sure that these rings are put on the proper way, that they don't overlap each other in the wrong direction. I'll show you really quick again in a second once I get this one squeezed on. Come on, let's go. There we go. Squeezed on right. I don't know how much the camera is going to pick up over here, but you can see the way the two angled slots. The angles are against each other because there's two ways you can put them. People can put them on like that, which is wrong. Or that's the right way, like that, where they're just neatly staying flush like that, so the outer circumference or the outer thickness stays the same. Like this, oh, it'll work for a while, but it's going to wear pretty quick. But that's how you want to have it. On you, come on. Okay, next case. Again, make sure that they mate together in the right sequence, and there we go. If you can't see the seam, if you virtually can't see the seam, then you know that everything is pretty good in here. So we are now good to go. You can now put the governor onto the shaft, and of course we have to line up. There's a couple of holes. Stuff in my hands. You have to line up so that the bolt installation hole over here lines up with that part on the shaft that I showed you a little bit earlier. One last check. Yes, and we are good to go here. Yes, we are good to go. Alright. Something is not going through right there. Something doesn't feel 100%. Let's see what's causing us a problem. Oh, that's not okay. Things don't go on with just ordinary hand force, and you know there's a problem. So we're going to take this off and examine and see what's going on here. We'll examine this further, and I'll be back in a few. Well, it looks like the difficulty source has been found on this over here. It wasn't because of any burrs or anything, because of the broken screw. The book doesn't really mention anything about this. It just says to assemble this all as one piece over here. But if you look at it, see the two halves, you have just ever so slight overlap. If it's not, they're not bolted up in exact alignment to it, so it appear that two halves will leave like an edge sitting inside. Sorry, it'll leave an edge sitting in there as you move it around. So looks like the answer to this problem over here is to put this piece on like this, and with everything loose, then you can tap it on. Literally just shove it on with your hands, it looks like. Well, I will need both hands for this over here actually, but just pretty much like that. There we go, it's on. So by tapping with my fist, and I'll just align it to the hole down there, and then we can tighten everything up as once. Huh. Again, something not suggested in the book, but you'll see that from time to time, and who knows, maybe it was new, it might have had a little bit better tolerances. But anyway, regardless, we got the part on without forcing or slamming. You never ever want to hammer or smack or try to jam on pieces like this. They should always fit on with just a little bit of hand pressure or by gravity pressure in the case of a governor valve. So that's another little lesson learned. Alright, now that we've got the governor assembly itself back on, we can put this side of the governor valve back in. Has a little C-clip on it, E-clip, whatever you want to call them. People call them all sorts of bad names when they go flying. like this one just did. But yeah, there we got it. Didn't lose it too bad. That's good to know. This assembly just has to slide through. Let me slide in those washers underneath there, like I was saying. So, according to the book, it says they have to go. It's with the concave side facing in. I think that's what it is. Yeah, yeah, that's it. This side facing in like that to absorb the shock. So we'll put a little bit of the Vaseline stuff on them. It may cause a bit of a funny shift at first, but I don't think so. I don't think it will be too much of an issue, really. One, and then we can get the other one down into there. The other washer. On the other side, you can see maybe you can just make out the slight concaveness of the washer, if that's a word. Beautiful, right through. So this valve is in, it's falling by its own weight. Great. Let's see if we can get that E-clip on without it being too much of a mess. Yeah, there it is. Those things evenly lie in weight to fly in whatever direction they can. Fortunately, I do have a little collection of these things, so if this one decides to go wayward, we do have others, but we don't want that to happen. Alright, get a screwdriver and drop on a thicker one. Right back. You go on and behave. Behave. Just on. Click. There we go. Little bugger didn't go flying. There we go. So the governor assembly's done. This is falling in its own weight as it should be. Perfect. Great. Just as we want it to be doing. So that works. Everything is good here. All is good. On to the next step. Okay, before we continue, we're just going to get the band tossed back into the transmission so we don't do the proverbial oops I forgot a part after you get the pump back in and things like that. So we're just going to put just a bit of oil onto the friction surface. All it's pretty much impregnated with oil already, being a used band. The new band, according to my friend who sells transmission parts, says it's about the most expensive one he's seen, like over $130, $140 for a simple band, and because this one's in perfect condition, we're just going to reuse it. A bit of oil on it. As soon as the sump is filled up, it's going to get pretty much soaked anyway, as it will be artificially very high, the pan, until we give it the initial crank over once the transmission's in, but it's just to protect it. Alright. Yeah, the band can be thrown into the transmission either way, but of course you want to make sure it's put on the right way. So again, like I said, you don't have to take it apart for that mistake either. So anyway, it goes on like this because the strut for the adjusting screw is the large one over here. And of course, it wouldn't fit down on that space that takes the strut for the servo assembly itself. So we'll be coming back to that a little bit later. But when the band's in, we know it's not going anywhere now, except where it should be. Alright, well, the bolt's loosened up on the pump, and we'll see what we have in here in a second. It'll probably be perfectly fine. But never want to take a chance. Now, GM recommends that you don't change the front bushing. They say that you just change the whole front cover, so we'll see what's going on in here to be exact. Look at this. Again, more evidence of moisture. It's a good thing we opened this thing up in the end. Look at that. Something obviously upset this transmission. Something made it get damp, something made it get stuck or full of rust over here. Same with this side over here. Same with this side as well over here too, so we're going to have to do a little bit of examining closer. yeah, let's see where that'll take us. Much better view of the mess that's going on over here right now. Like I said, this is not just from just a little bit of dampness from sitting in storage. This transmission was obviously had water at one point of its life. The bushing looks like it's in perfectly good condition. There's virtually nowhere showing on it whatsoever. So I'm not going to risk changing it, not in the least over here. The front seal will be changed obviously because that looks a little bit dry. I'll give it a good clean up and we'll go from there. Well, we got this old pig cleaned up, it looks like. And for the most part, it looks like mechanically it's okay. It's going to have some little bit more cleaning and addressing over here to get rid of these little rust particles so they don't bother anything, but it's really very salvageable. There's no real wear on the pump surface. You got to be very careful with these gears, by the way, because they're not any sort of hardened metal. These can crack very easily. And it's always good, although there's no orientation with these, it's always good to put them back in the same direction that they were going initially when you took them out. So well, at least we got that part done, and it's always attention to detail. And I just may go ahead and replace that bushing because obviously if they offer one, it looks like they changed their minds over the year about being able to change bushings in pumps. So we'll take care of that as well too. More fun.